In Unit 2, Activity 3, you are being asked to create a survey on what is the biggest impact on adolescence. And this is a part of a unit in which you are looking at the transition between being a teenager, launching, and becoming an adult. In the content, there's a lot of resources that can help you to understand what you need to do in order to create a questionnaire and then hand it out. I just wanted to take you through those steps so that you could understand what needs to be done and some exemplars. I will be posting this video as well as the exemplars within the newsfeed, so be sure to check out the exemplars if you have any questions. The assignment is outlined step by step, but don't hesitate to email me if you're confused as to what you're supposed to be looking at. So the very first thing before you create a survey or a questionnaire is that you want to start with a research question. You want to have something that you want to find out. Now, the general topic is, what are the influences within a teenager's life or adolescent's life? That's kind of vague. If you want to get more specific, you could pick a topic and then create the questions around that in terms of picking a factor that you think is most influential and then narrowing in on the questions related to that. So what I would highly recommend is most of you have an apps account or a Gmail account, and within that you have access to Google Forms. This is beneficial for a number of reasons, in that it already creates it for you, but it makes the handing out and the collection of responses very easy. The downside to it is it requires people to use electronics, and often when people get a request to fill out a questionnaire, they are often hesitant electronically, but if they get a piece of paper, they will often complete it in front of you and hand it back to you. So both have their challenges. You can do it either way. I'm going to show you through a Google form just to show you probably the easiest distribution method that I have found and what Google Forms can actually do for you in terms of correlating the responses. So here is an example of a Google form, and this is a student who completed this last year. And so in your assignment, in the very beginning, it asks you to create a survey with 6 to 10 questions. That's a general idea. Somewhere in there in terms of these should be content questions. Be sure to include a minimum of 2 questions that relate to things such as demographics. And I just wanted to show you what demographics are. That's where you lump people into categories based on their roles or what background information you need to know about them. Those could be age. I often say instead of gender that we say sex, male, female, or even giving other options, as well as some background information in terms of the roles that you play. These are just some demographics. You could have, sometimes I often see surveys about income, but that doesn't really relate to this. So you want to make sure you have at least 2 questions asking about their background as to how old they are or possibly gender, just so that you get an idea and can create statistics about them. So when you are in Google Classroom, you can create these questions. And then these went on as to what this individual is a part of. And they did multiple choice as well as ranking questions. I would highly recommend that you change it up and that you don't just have multiple choice after multiple choice question. Some people get bored and they don't really read the question. They just start clicking things. So you want to make sure you switch it up so they actually have to read the question or what they need to do about it. So when you have a questionnaire and you want to share it out, you finish completing it, that within send you have a number of options. You can actually email it out to people. You could also have your link that if you shorten it, then you can copy and paste that to social media, and these things are really, really important so that you can actually get it out there. You could post that to anything you wanted, or you could enter individuals' addresses in there, or you could ask specific people and send it to them. So I have used Google Forms in a number of different ways, and one of the challenges that I found was that when I was using it with people who were not signed in to the Hastings and Prince Edward District School Board apps account, which is what I am logged into now, or I tried to make it public. Unlike a Google Doc, these don't really work that way. If I wanted to do that and share it with other people outside of this building, outside of this institution, then I would probably use my personal Gmail account as opposed to the apps account. But in terms of sharing, there's some important things that you need to consider, not just how to share it, but when you go inside, you can actually, into settings, the cogwheel, you can actually collect email addresses in case you wanted to have contact with them or elicit more information from them. But if you see here, in terms of looking at who can respond, it's either restricting it to users in the HPDSB or that they have to log in with Google. When I have a Google Doc, I can make it accessible to anyone and they don't have to sign into Google whether they have one or not. This is requiring them to have a Google account to be able to log it in. So either they have to be in the board or they have to sign in with Google, and both of those options are limiting when it comes to someone who doesn't have an account. So just be aware of that. You can actually change it to either or, but it is a challenge when you're trying to distribute it, and that you may have someone who's in university to fill it out, but unfortunately if they're not in HPDSB or they're not a Google user, that they won't be able to access your Google Forms. So you might want to think outside of using your apps account and maybe even using a different format in which to create a survey. The thing that I do like about Google Forms is that it collects the responses, and there's two ways to view this. When you collect responses, Google actually creates it for you in charts and graphs, and it uses a spreadsheet to do this and collect this, but you can actually, because it's Google, you can actually copy that and paste that into a Google Doc really simply. And that is kind of nice when you're finishing up a report. The other thing that you can do is if in your responses you click on Sheets, then you can actually view them as the spreadsheet. This was not mine, so I wasn't able to access it. But in terms of creating that, then you could actually see it in a spreadsheet and copy that data rather than Google showing you that information. Okay, so you've created a question. You created your Google form, you shared it out, and now you've collected your results. There's usually a bit of time in between the sharing of it and the results, which is why I've given you a whole week this week in order to do this assignment, because it's going to take you a bit of time. So once you have your results, then the last thing you need to do is complete your final report. So it's not meant to be a 5-page report. Some things that I would like to see in it, if you would like to copy and paste one or more of those charts in it, then please feel free. Often they are at the end of it. You can use them as an appendix. So you refer to chart 1 or chart 2, but you don't put them in the middle of your text. You keep them at the end. This student opted not to include any of the charts that were included. They did give me a link to their survey so that I could see it. You will notice that there's no formative steps which you have to submit to get approval for, but I would like to see the survey that you distributed, either a Google Doc or I would like to see it as a URL. In terms of the amount of people, and then answering who was the demographics that you that responded, and last but not least, what did it show you, and a reflection on using Google Forms. So when we go through, we're creating a questionnaire. There's lots of tips in there for you. Distribute and to compile your data. So you can do a much longer report if you have more data that you would like to. Most students focused in and zeroed in on 1 to 3 questions that really revealed a little bit about what they found out, but it's not meant to be a long, enduring assignment. Just meant to be exposure to knowing how to hand out a survey and do your own primary research. Let me know if you have any problems.